With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Today, I want to talk about the hellscape that is technical diagramming, right? Everybody's nodding their heads right now, And there is a potential solution that I want to share. There was one name that several people brought up. I did some digging, and it's kind of nuts how much this program Miro has for developers. I have to share this. It could potentially be a game changer for you. So my favorite part about Miro is that half the work is already done. Like right now, typically we spend hours starting diagrams from scratch, right? Gathering information, you get buy-in from every team. Following up, that's a lot of work to do. But Miro has a full set of integrations with the tools you're probably already using. And they also offer open APIs and SDKs for custom solutions for all those niche diagramming use cases we have to do, right? So the end result is the same, but it doesn't take forever. It's a massive, massive time saver. I'm transforming basic flowcharts and network architectures, and it all lives in one place. So are you using Miro? Have you used it? I want to hear.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Europe's been on everyone's lips. In, out, remain or change, red, blue, yellow, green, white or even purple. But one thing's for sure, Great Britain are in the European Games. They're being held in Belarus in June, and we have the British lineup with some surprising names in there too. I'm John.
And I'm Michael, and don't forget, on Anything But Footy, we love to hear your opinions. You can email us anythingbutfooty@gmail.com. You can tweet us anythingbutf. We're also on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. So the European Games on the agenda on this episode of Anything But Footy. We'll also be talking about equality in sport. Katarina Johnson-Thompson. We've got news of a failed drugs test as well again this week. And in our roundup, we'll be featuring the sports of sailing, boxing, rugby sevens, athletics, modern pentathlon, rowing, ice hockey, golf, and much more.
So Great Britain, Team GB, very much in Europe this week, as British Olympic Association announced more than 100 athletes will be heading off to Belarus for the Minsk 2019 European Games. And yes, I did have to Google where Minsk was. 93 athletes have been confirmed from 10 sports, with 8 archers expected to be named over the next few days. And this is the second staging of the so-called European Games. The first was in Baku. No, I didn't remember it either. Back in 2015. But this is equivalent to the stature of something like the Commonwealth Games for most of Europe. We're talking 4,000 athletes, 50 countries competing across 10 days in 200 different medal events, with the opening and closing ceremony being held in the Dynamo National Olympic Stadium. It starts June the 21st and it ends June the 30th. And as I say, Team GB will be competing in archery, badminton, boxing, canoe sprint, cycling, gymnastics, judo, karate, shooting, table tennis and wrestling. And some big names will be taking part, Michael.
Yep, Jason Kenny, I suggest, would be probably top of the bill as far as Team GB are concerned. Sally Conway, a medalist at Rio at the Olympics, along with Katy Marchant, and they're both in the team. And Amber Hill as well, who won medals on the Gold Coast in the Commonwealth Games, will be going as part of the shooting squad. The 8 archers that are being added to that 93 who were initially confirmed by Team GB across 10 sports means that the British contingent will be 101. And the archers, by the way, won a bronze medal at the Archery World Cup in the women's compound event this week as well. Team GB will have more female athletes than men, and as everybody knows, and I didn't have to Google it, Minsk is where Phoebe from Friends' boyfriend lived. That's what everyone has said to me when I've talked about the European Games in Minsk. It's interesting, this one, because I think we have to say it's separate to the European Championships. Olympics, which of course were held their inaugural event in Glasgow last year. And this is, as you say, is the second edition of the European Games. 10 qualifying events for Tokyo, 4 European Championships going to be held, and a lot of gold medals up for grabs again here. And basically, the idea behind the European Games was to bring Europe in line with the Pan American Games, the Pacific Games, the Asian Games, and the African Games. It now means that every continent has its own games. And I think for sports that you mentioned there, like wrestling, like shooting, for example, that looks like it's going to miss out on the next Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. It doesn't look like we're going to have shooting events in the Commonwealth Games. I think the European Games are a great opportunity. If you are one of Team GB's badminton players, for example, if you're in the judo team, if you're a judoka, this is another brilliant opportunity, a multi-sport event. In 2015, our medalists included Jade Jones, Nicola Adams, Joe Joyce, Duncan Scott. We know what they went on to do. So I think on the positive side, it's great for the so-called minority sports. It's great for athletes to get experience in a multi-sport event environment, especially when we're kind of 14 months out from Tokyo and the Olympics. From the negative side, I would say the expense for host cities, building venues for something like this. The Dutch, of course, pulled out of hosting, and the lack of big names going, of course. The athletics, as we know, none of the key British names will be there, so therefore it won't really register too much on the British sporting landscape. It is going to be live, though, on BT Sport. I remember watching a roundup highlights programme on the BBC of the first edition in Baku. I think it got about 90 minutes coverage one Sunday afternoon on BBC Two. But this one is going to be live across BT Sport, as you say, between the 21st and the 30th of June.
Now, it's interesting, isn't it? You mentioned Jason Kenny there, the greatest ever track cyclist, alongside Bradley Wiggins with 6 golds and 7 medals in total in Olympic history. Fellow cyclist Katy Marchant and Sally Conway, as you say, both won medals in Rio in cycling and judo. So it obviously means something to these guys to go to this event. But as you say, the issue is it's not in the public radar. You know, that's part of our job, to get it out there and get people interested in it. But do we need another multi-sporting event? Or, as you say, is it right that we are like Pan-Asia, Pan-America, that we have these other multi-sport events apart from the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics?
I like the idea of it, I really do, and I think it's always in the back of Beyondsville. So it's Minsk or Baku, which is a long way away from people in London or Glasgow or Cardiff. And that boils down to the economics. As I said, the venues, hosting something like this, having a stadium big enough to put athletics on. We've not got aquatics in 2019, but we did have swimming, diving, water polo and artistic swimming. The reason it's going to places like Minsk and Baku is because they are willing to foot the bill for it. I think my issue with it is we've got this European Championships, which I thought was a really neat concept and really well done by Glasgow last year, where they brought a lot of European Championships together. And of course, I think that will go from strength to strength because it incorporated major European Championships in sports like athletics. Obviously, that was held in Berlin, though, last time. In track cycling and gymnastics, for example, it got the big names there. To me, it seems bizarre to have a European Games and a European Championship, and I think the future for this event, and if it is going to get a little bit more sort of public affection and more noticeability, I think the European Games and the European Championships at some point are going to have to come together. I do like the idea. I love a multi-sport event. I think for a lot of people that maybe don't get the opportunity to go to an Olympic Games, this will be the peak of their career. I think for a lot of people that maybe are building towards an Olympic Games, this will be a very important step on the road, a bit like the Commonwealth Games is, and I think it will take time. The first modern Olympics wasn't the Olympic Games that we see today. It's taken many editions to get where we are. The European Games, the European Championships from last year are very much in their early stages, and I think we need to give it a bit of time, and we need to show it a little bit of respect.
And I think that's right. You know, when things are new, it's so easy to go, oh, this is just rubbish. This isn't important. This isn't what people are interested in. And actually, you're right. You know, it took Mr. Coubertin quite a number of years to get the Olympic movement going, and now here we are sitting, on a weekly basis talking about the Olympics. That we want to talk about. But if we'd have started it 150 years ago, people would have looked at us and gone, what the heck are you two doing? So I think, you've got to look at it like that. And also, as you say, it's important for archery, shooting and table tennis because you can qualify for the big one, if you like, the 2020 Olympics. If you perform well in Minsk, you could automatically then be going to the Olympics. And as you rightly say as well, Jason Kenny, he obviously needs something. He needs the practice. He needs the competition to get himself ready for next year's Olympics. And I think that's a really good point to make as well. So it's June the 21st to the 30th, as you say. BT Sport are showing it and have exclusive rights right throughout the games. They're going to be doing daily and live coverage of the games throughout the competition. And of course, we'll keep you up to date as well here on Anything But Footy. The European Games, we're definitely in it.
We're definitely in it. One person who won't be in it, though, is Katarina Johnson-Thompson. But what a huge year she might have ahead of her. She's been competing at the Gotzis heptathlon meeting, and against a world-class field there, she's registered a personal best score, a world lead score this year as well, of 6,813 points. Now, to put that into context, she's third on the UK list now, behind Jessica Ennis-Hill and Denise Lewis. I think Jessica Ennis-Hill only really beat a score like that a couple of times in her career, and that was good enough to win medals at Olympic and world level. It's the first time Katarina Johnson-Thompson has gone over 6,800 points. When she picked up her silver medal in Berlin in the European Championships last year, she only registered 6,759 points. She went as high as she's ever gone in the high jump, as quick as she's ever gone in the 200 metres, an improved javelin as well, but it was still well down on Nafi Thiam. And I mentioned Nafi Thiam of Belgium, the reigning Olympic and world champion. She wasn't there because of injury. She is due back next month, but I think this is another landmark performance from Katarina Johnson-Thompson. Last year was a big year. World Indoor Pentathlon champion in Birmingham, Commonwealth Games gold medalist on the Gold Coast, European silver medal. I think her year last year was overshadowed a little bit by the achievements of Dina Asher-Smith. But reading in the Telegraph, Ben Bloom's article, he described Katarina Johnson-Thompson. He said, remember when Katarina Johnson-Thompson was known for her flakiness? Remember when she seemed like an accident waiting to happen? No longer. Is this the breakthrough event for KJT?
Well, she said before the event that she told reporters that she doesn't think she was the favourite. She still thought she was an imposter. And I think you're right, and Ben Bloom is right. There's no doubting she's a champion in the making now. And actually, when we talked about her, I think it was in episode 3 of Anything But Footy. It was even before we could come up with names for the podcast, for our weekly podcast. It was that early in it, and we talked about her performing so well in the European indoors in Glasgow. Obviously, she's the world champion indoors from Birmingham 2018. You mentioned the Commonwealth Games in the Gold Coast as well, and she's just getting into that kind of habit of winning. And it's amazing when you get into the habit of winning that actually you keep on doing it. And she won in Gotzis last year in Austria. She's done it again this year. She's thrown a personal best in the javelin. I know you say it's down on Thiam, but you can't really do more than your personal best when you're in that competition. And when you are the favourite and the pressure's on you, then she's just beginning to not doubt herself. And I think that's probably the main difference from where she was. And even really before this week, where she was saying that she was an imposter. But a few interesting things for you, Mike, and a question for you. So she burst onto the scene in 2012, obviously, with Jess Ennis-Hill. I wonder whether Katarina Johnson-Thompson is now at the same kind of level as Jess Ennis was in the build-up to 2012. So, Jess Ennis became the face of London 2012. Actually, Katarina Johnson-Thompson, because of her so-called flakiness, has not really been the face of British athletics, and it has been Dina Asher-Smith, who is, of course, a double European champion, and Laura Muir as well. But you wonder, actually, with that performance, does that make her a bigger medal hope than Laura Muir and even Dina Asher-Smith for gold in Doha? Because actually, as you say, those points that she got today, her winning score was better than Thiam's when she won the 2016 Rio Olympics and the 2017 World Championships.
I think she is a better medal hope than Dina Asher-Smith and Laura Muir. Dina Asher-Smith had a fantastic European Championships. She now has to step up and do that on a world stage. Laura Muir to do it on a world stage outdoors as well. She needs to, again, step up there. And I think Katarina Johnson-Thompson, out the three, is best positioned to be on top of that podium, the gold medal at the world stage in Doha at the end of this year. Having said that, I think people will always doubt her because her poor high jump cost her at London 2017. She had the 3 long jump failures after lying second at 2015 and in Beijing at the World Championships there, and ended up finishing 28th overall. So I think people will remember that. 2015 it didn't work out at the world level. 2017 it didn't work out at the world level. Will it be third time lucky? Thiam, as we said, will be back as well. She will be a huge rival. She won the gold medal ahead of Jessica Ennis-Hill in Rio. The comments about being an imposter, that doesn't actually surprise me, because I think what Katarina Johnson-Thompson is trying to do here is just take the pressure off herself a little bit. I think she's recognised that ever since she burst onto the scene as a world junior champion. She went to London 2012 to gain experience, and I interviewed her a couple of times during that period of her life, and then everyone thought that she was the natural successor. And actually it's taken a bit of time to succeed Jessica Ennis-Hill in this event, as it did Jessica Ennis-Hill to succeed Denise Lewis in this event as well. So I think comments like saying she doesn't believe she belongs on that level at that stage, being an imposter, I think she's just trying to take the pressure off herself. And clearly that mental outlook, if you like, that psychology, the way she's going into these events now, it seems to be working for her, because when she was going in and we were all talking her up, it just didn't work when she was out on the track and the field. And
we've talked about Thiam a lot, haven't we? The European Indoors in Glasgow, the Worlds in Birmingham in 2018. You know, she's from Belgium, so she could have been competing in these events. It's very, you say she's back next month, but it's very difficult to come back from an injury and perform to the level that you can win gold medals. So, yes, we need to see what she's like when she comes back. And as you say, she's still probably the favourite, being the world champion and the Olympic champion. But injuries do play a part in athletics particularly, and everybody knows that. So I think for Katarina Johnson-Thompson, really, she is in pole position for that gold medal at Doha at the moment for me, and she is probably the biggest British athletic star at the moment, I think, with a nailed-on chance of getting a gold medal. We will keep you up to date with Katarina Johnson-Thompson and, of course, all the athletics over the next few weeks as we head into the outdoor season here on Anything But Footy. But lots of debate about women's sport and its prominence this week and in recent weeks, and we've always said on Anything But Footy we never wanted to make it a thing. It's equal in our eyes. More women are going to Minsk, as Michael says, for Team GB than men. Exactly the same happened in Baku. Johnson-Thompson, Muir, Asher Smith, the big names in British athletics. I actually can't name a men's gold medal favourite in my eyes. So for me, equality, and Michael as well, equality means equality. So I was somewhat slightly surprised by some of the talk this week around women's football. And it is the big World Cup coming up in France from June the 7th, and we will be covering it here as England can help qualify Team GB for the Olympics, of course, in Tokyo 2020. Michael, I don't know whether you saw the comments made by Emma Hayes, who is the Chelsea women's manager, and she called for the goals in women's football to be made smaller because of physical differences between the men's version of the sport. And what surprised me about it, Michael, was not necessarily her comments. They're her views, and that's her right to say that. But it was then every journalist, male journalist that I've read, went, well, yeah, absolutely, that's a great idea. Why? Why is it a good idea?
Well, I don't think the women's game necessarily has to mirror the men's game. If you look back at athletics, you don't have women doing a decathlon. You have them doing a heptathlon. Everything doesn't have to be exactly the same. And Emma Hayes has got a fantastic pedigree. The women's coach at Chelsea, of course. She's been linked with the men's team job if Maurizio Sarri was to leave. She's reached the Champions League semi-finals, and she's also been third in the league this season. And as you say, she suggested maybe smaller goals, because women in their physical makeup are generally smaller than the men playing the professional game of football. And as I say, I think Emma Hayes' point is that why not create a product, if you like, and I hate to use that word, that is watchable, is enjoyable, is marketable. And if that means that the women's game needs to adapt slightly, needs to innovate slightly, and smaller goals is one of the ways of doing that, well, why not?
Isn't that a bit like, oh, bless them, they can't quite do the big goals? Isn't it a bit patronising?
I do take that point, but do you say that about athletes saying, well, they can't manage 10 events in a decathlon over 2 days, so we'll only give them a heptathlon? Oh, bless them.
Well,
no, we don't, do we?
Well, we don't at the moment, but arguably, maybe we should. Maybe we should be saying these are, we should be doing 10 events, and the hurdles should be the high hurdles. Not because the women compete over smaller hurdles. I just think when we talked about Coubertin earlier, he didn't have women in the Olympics at all, and you just think if it's going to be the same sport, and football is a great sport, we don't talk about it much, but it is a great sport, and it is available for everyone to play. And I thought it was interesting, the Chelsea and England goalkeeper Carly Telford, who's 5'9". So frankly, she's taller than me, Michael. And she's rejected her club manager's claim that the goal should be smaller, saying, "Look, actually, no, coach us better. Coach us to a way where it's not easy for people to lob us. Change the way. Don't just because this is how men's goalkeepers are coached, then women's goalkeepers need to be coached in a different way." And I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. Actually, put it back onto the managers and the coaches and say, well, actually make us better players rather than change the fabric of the whole game.
It's a really interesting debate, and I was reading Frank Kirby's comments around equal pay for men and women's football this week as well. In the US, the women's national team have signed a lawsuit accusing the US Soccer Federation of gender discrimination because the men were earning $8,000 more per game. Now, in England, the men's England team, they actually donate their fees to charity. That's because they're all earning £250,000 a week at their club, so they can afford to do it. It's a different kettle of fish as far as the women's game is concerned. I do understand what's happening, though, in the US with the women's national team, because in America, women's football is arguably bigger than men's football. Yeah. The women have won 3 World Cups. The men didn't qualify for 2018. Therefore, it does seem incredibly unfair that the men are earning $8,000 more per game. But I think Frank Kirby's nailed it. He says, or rather she says, Frank Kirby says, the women need to grow the game first. We need to win the World Cup. Then we can start talking about equal pay. We need to start filling the same stadiums. Then we can start talking about equal pay. And I think whilst not suggesting equal pay here for the men and the women's team, she also says the women's team need to start working harder at getting good endorsements, getting good sponsorship deals. She has a Nike boot deal, for example. And she says that they need to stop giving themselves away for free. And I totally agree with her here. And, it's always an issue for people that are maybe at the start of a long road. And I think the women's game have innovated fantastically well. They are really on the right trajectory. They are moving very, very fast. But they still have a long way to go, as we know, if they're to rival the men's game. Do you remember after England won the Rugby World Cup in 2003, rugby became the new football?
Yes.
And then when England won the Ashes in 2005, cricket became the new football. Well, I wonder whether this could be the watershed moment this summer. England win the World Cup and then women's football could become the new football, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I'm really looking forward to having Team GB, assuming they qualify, which I think they will, in the Tokyo Olympics. I think it will be one of the big events, and it's funny, we always say this, that in this country, football isn't part of the Olympics, but when I was in Rio, going to the Maracanã and being in a stadium full of yellow and green shirts, obviously not Norwich City, but Brazil fans, and seeing Neymar score a goal.
Leeds would have taken more,
Yeah, but they're not in the Premier League. But seeing Neymar scoring a goal in that stadium was one of the Olympic highlights that I will always take away with me. And I think Team GB, the fact that men aren't going is disappointing, but the women, that could be a really big story for us in Tokyo 2020, as you say, if they win the World Cup as well. There's a few more bits I want to talk about on equality, but just very quickly on football, because I watched the warm-up game that England beat Denmark 2-0 in their penultimate friendly before their opening World Cup match against Scotland in Nice. And Telford, who is the Chelsea and England goalkeeper, wasn't in goal. It was actually Karen Bardsley, and she played very, very well, so I would assume that she's going to be number one, although Phil Neville, the manager, hasn't yet made up his mind. As we know, Phil Neville, brother of Gary, not for the success he had at Manchester United. Jill Scott scored the second with a header at the start of the second half in Walsall. Just a few things that really alarmed me, Michael, very quickly, that I must say. A, Phil Neville, don't wear the waistcoat and tie like Gareth. Last summer was a one-off. Make your own
Gareth
story.
Light.
Exactly.
Gareth Light.
Just don't do it. He also rested a few big-name players like Steph Houghton in defence, and their defending wasn't very good from England. In fact, it slightly reminded me of a nervous and scared-looking Phil Neville. So, manager, please don't portray that to your players and never play a football match at Walsall again. The pitch was atrocious. But look, we did brilliantly in Canada 4 years ago when we reached the semi-finals. Let's hope that the old England is long gone and the pressure does not tell for England women in the Lionesses, as they're called, the World Cup in France in the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, the good thing about Walsall, of course, is it's very handy for the M6. So that might be. And I'm just mindful of when Gareth Southgate was asked why England played a friendly ahead of the World Cup at Ellen Road in Leeds, and he said, "Well, because I live in Harrogate." So these things maybe just come into the coach's mind, and maybe Phil Neville thought, "Well, I can get an early getaway by playing in Walsall." It's interesting this week as well. Just a couple of further points on this. Emma Hayes, as we said, linked with the Chelsea job if Maurizio Sarri leaves. I think it's a very, very long shot that she would actually get that. But, in terms of coaching a football team, what you want from your coach is to be able to tactically set up a team, to be able to manage different sort of eventualities in a game, be able to deal with personnel, sign the right players, identify and nurture talent, and sex shouldn't be a barrier to that, should it? I remember Hope Powell, when she was the England manager, she's now, of course, with Brighton women's team. She was sacked by England after a bad performance at Euro 2013. She was linked with Grimsby. Do you think we are going to get to the time where maybe a women's coach is going to get a job in the Football League, in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think it will. No, I think it's coming, and as you say, it may well be some of the lower leagues to start with, and why not? And no one ever thought before Sven-Göran Eriksson that England could have an international manager. So
exactly,
absolutely, exactly. It's got to happen. It's got to happen. Now, very quickly on equality, a couple of bits that we really need to mention, because lay off Katy Boulter is frankly the message from us. She has been a superstar for British tennis. She's on the rise. She's 22 years old from Leicester. She helped Joe Conter win the Fed Cup playoff to return to the world group level in more than 20-odd years, as we talked about in a previous edition of Anything But Footy. But she got really criticised again for going to the French Open on Friday, saying she's not fit and collecting £20,000. Now, look, she'd earned her spot in the Grand Slam, so therefore she should be rewarded for it. Yes, you might say, well, she knew she was injured before that. She said that she thought she might be able to play, but she went on Friday, collected her money, and that's the rules, that you get half the money if you turn up and say, look, I'm not fit. And Nick Kyrgios did exactly the same thing, and I don't see many people complaining about him, the Australian. So as Joe Conter says, the rules are the rules. She's done nothing wrong.
No, I totally agree with what she's done. She's not broken any rules. And for a tennis player at her level, £20,000 might be the difference this year. There isn't huge money washing around at that level, of course, for tennis players like Katy Boulter, and she might well need that £20,000 to stay on the circuit. So the message is that she's done the right thing. Our other message, I think, on Anything But Footy today is to the sportswear manufacturers, that they need to start doing the right thing, because I'm sure you've seen this interview with Alison Felix. She's given an interview to the New York Times. She's a 6-time Olympic gold medalist, and she's given the interview off the back of comments from Alicia Montano and Cara Gaucher, who both said this week that they'd had their pay cut by sponsors during pregnancy and what was essentially their maternity leave afterwards. And Alison Phoenix has described her issues with her sportswear partner as heartbreaking. She said she wasn't supported during pregnancy, and she said the company that she was partnered with, who claimed to have progressive values, were the exact opposite, and they pressured her to get back to training. So another message, I think, to the sponsors, to the sportswear manufacturers, is if one of your female athletes gets pregnant, you need to support them, because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely, here. It seems like every week we have a Rio 2016 Olympic medalist being tarnished. Well, Eunice Kerwer, who won marathon silver at the 2016 Olympics, has been suspended after testing positive for EPO. The Athletics Integrity Unit announced that the 34-year-old, who was born in Kenya but competes for Bahrain now, had been provisionally suspended after failing a test for the blood-boosting drug. Jemima Somgong, who beat Kerwer to gold in Rio, is currently serving a doping ban after testing positive for EPO in 2017.
I think we're going to get to the point where you and I are going to get allocated medals for something in Rio, aren't we? As we were there and not on EPO as far as I know. Slightly different story around doping, and this week has seen the retirement of Ruta Meliutait. Now you'll remember her. She was the Lithuanian swimmer who actually studied and was based in Plymouth. Went to school with Tom Daley. She won a breaststroke gold medal in London at just 15 years of age. She's announced her retirement at the age of 22 after missing 3 drugs tests over the last 13 months. She had faced up to a 2-year ban, and she said she's ready to start a new phase in her life. And I've got a certain amount of sympathy with Ruta Meliutait, because when you look into her story, if you like, of what's happened to her in the last couple of years with injury, with illness, with mental illness in particular as well, I think she's basically missed those 3 drugs tests because she's gone off the grid. That's my guess at it. I don't know that. But I just think for Ruta Meliutait, she'd just had enough, and I think that's why this week she's announced her retirement after missing those 3 drug tests. And I think she's just having shot to prominence at 15 years of age, and as we know, it's very, very difficult then, and that's why we applaud Tom Daley for the way he's managed his career and the way he has continued. Having shot to prominence at 15 years of age, I think over the last year or so, my guess would be she's just had enough.
Here, again, well said, Michael, and we wish her well. Rowing, the Westminster Mile, golf, cycling, modern pentathlon, rugby sevens and sailing still to come. But will there be boxing at the Tokyo 2020, Michael?
It will be there. It retains its place on the Tokyo 2020 programme, but the AIBA, the International Boxing Association, will not be organising it, according to the IOC. They have concerns over finance, governance, ethics, refereeing and judging. That doesn't leave a lot else, does it? Basically, they were suspended by the IOC in December 2017. The IOC meet in Lausanne later on in June, and they are set to approve this, so there will need to be a new task force to organise the boxing tournament in Tokyo.
It's interesting, though, that WBA, the first professional boxing board, have reached out to the IOC and said they'd be interested in running the events in Tokyo. Of course, it was founded in 1921, and former heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko has previously said the WBA should organise boxing at the Olympics. And uncertain times, as you say, for Michael, because there's a reduction in men's categories from 10 at Rio to 8 in Tokyo, which will allow for the rise of 3 women's divisions to 5. So, you know, equality is coming to boxing, but they need someone to organise it to start with. Right. Let's run through some of the other big headlines then on anything but footy, and more medal success for Britain in the European Championships ahead of Tokyo next year. Lorenzo Chiavarini claimed his first senior major title, finishing top of the European Laser Championships in Porto. The 2-time Olympian and teammate Nick Thompson claimed silver, which means it will be a tough selection for Tokyo. And in recent weeks, if you haven't heard it on anything but footy, we've talked Giles Scott and Britain's 1-2 successes in Weymouth as well.
At the Westminster Mile, well done to Chris O'Hare, who registered a time of exactly 4 minutes for the mile to win the aptly named Roger Bannister Trophy for the second year in succession. Well done as well to Melissa Courtney, who defended her title too. She won the Diane Leather Trophy, and she held off European 1500 metres champion Laura Muir. Now, the Farah family took part in the mass participation event, 9,198, including England's one-day World Cup cricket team, also took part in that. So Mo Farah started the race and then joined the kids and the wife to take part in it as well. He is taking part in the more serious 10k event, and don't forget, talking of 10ks, the night of the 10k PBs taking place in Highgate on the 6th of July. Looking forward to that.
England won 2 but lost a crucial 1 in their group games at the HSBC Rugby Sevens in Twickenham, which means they lost out on a quarter-final place and the chance to book Team GB's Tokyo slot. So a bit like the football, we don't know whether the Rugby Sevens will be going as yet in the men's. Simon Amore's men lost to Ireland but then beat Scotland and New Zealand, but not enough to progress. And James Rodwell, who competed for GB in Rio, also played his last Twickenham Sevens tournament before retiring, and the RFU have now appointed him to the coaching staff moving forward. The 34-year-old made an all-time record 92 World 7 Series appearances and a record 69 consecutive tournaments. But ahead of Tokyo, England can still earn Team GB a place via a European qualifying tournament in July. We'll keep you up to date.
Summer is upon us, so let's talk snow and ice. On the ice, Great Britain have moved up to 20th place in the world rankings in ice hockey. After the World Championships in Slovakia, Finland won the gold, Canada silver, Russia won the bronze. Great Britain avoided relegation with a dramatic 4-3 win in overtime against France. It was really good viewing as well. Great Britain finished 13th. On the snow, Dave Riding, a two-time podium finisher last season, along with Charlie Guest and Alex Tilley, have been named as Great Britain's alpine skiers for next season by GB Snow Sport.
Kate French could be on course to improve on her 5th place in Rio in the modern pentathlon. That's swimming, fencing, riding, running, shooting to you and me. The 28-year-old from Kent produced a 3rd gold medal winning performance at the Pentathlon World Cup in a row in Prague, having done it in Egypt and Bulgaria in 2017 and 18. She dominated the first 2 days of qualification and was unstoppable in the final. And double British delighters teammate Jess Varley, who made up 6 places in the laser run at the end to claim bronze. So well done to them. And silver success too for Britain's Joseph Chung, who came bursting through to take 2nd place in the men's event in the last 800 metres of the run. Reigning Olympic champion and 2-time world and European champion Alexander Lezin of Russia won the World Cup, his first since 2014.
Congratulations to Annabelle Dimmock in golf. She's won her First Ladies European Tour title, the Ladies Open in France. It's her first title after 5 years on the professional circuit. Big breakthrough moment then for Annabelle Dimmock, who, hey, who knows, might be representing Team GB in the golf in Tokyo. It also means she qualifies for the final major of the season on the same course later this year.
And 49 athletes have been selected to represent Great Britain at the 2019 European Rowing Championships in Lucerne in Switzerland. Zoe Lee has moved back into the women's 8 from the Quad Sculls, the boat she won silver at the 2016 Rio Olympics, and she's joined by teammate from there, Karen Bennett. And reigning Olympic champion in the men's 4, Mo Sabihi, is in the powerhouse in the men's 8 as well. Brendan Purcell, who's now British Rowing Director of Performance, said our main focus is definitely on the World Rowing Championships at the end of August. However, we want to qualify as many boats as possible for the Olympic and Paralympics, and the European Championships will provide a good indication as to our speed and how that compares to some of our biggest rivals. It will be a big weekend for British rowing.
And at the World Cup canoeing in Poznan, Liam Heath was amongst the British gold medalists. He is the Olympic champion. Of course, he won his gold medal in the K1 200 metres. And looking ahead to this week as well, we'll be just keeping our eye on Simon Yates in the Giro d'Italia in cycling. He is comfortably in the top 10 of the general classification after yet another podium finish.
So Europe has dominated the agenda. One thing to be positive about in sport, we're very much part of it and will continue to be at the top medals table.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Spring, is that you? Warmer temps mean new Allbirds styles. Meet the Superlight Collection, the lightest ever shoes from Allbirds, now in fresh colors. These must-have travel shoes have a lighter-than-air feel and barely their fit that made them the most packable shoes ever. That means more comfort and less baggage. Try the Superlight Tree Runner with a cushy foam midsole and breathable eucalyptus fiber upper. Plus, they're comfy right out of the box. So, what can you do in a Superlight shoe? What can't you do is the better question. And because they're super packable, the real question is, where are you taking them? Experience how Allbirds redefines comfort. Visit allbirds.com and use code SUPER24 for a free pair of socks with a purchase of $48 or more. That's ALLBIRDS.com, code SUPER24.